Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments on bicycle travel adventures. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109, and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 429th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. On this edition, we are live, baby, live from Seattle, Washington. Hello to everybody in the chat box. We've already had a little bit of a discussion to get the show rolling. If you are listening to this and it's after the fact and you would prefer to watch it, go to the Pedal Shift YouTube channel and you will be able to check it all out there. We are joined by a whole host of the regulars. We got G4, we got Scott Max, we got Scott Crocker, we got Scott Sherrick. No, it's not a requirement to be named Scott, but it just seems like that tonight. And of course, we got Terry from Baltimore as well, amongst others. We got actually a shockingly good showing considering this is a little earlier than normal. I'm normally doing these from the East Coast and it's, 8 o'clock seems perfectly fine. Now that it's 5 o'clock on the West Coast, I'm realizing we're going to have to push these back a little bit. I'm more of a night owl when it comes to these things. Night owl, like 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. is a night owl. It's effectively for this. On this edition, we are going to cover a hodgepodge of things and hopefully not repeat stuff a little bit too much. It's more kind of on the update side of things for some of these topics. First thing we're going to talk about are thoughts on Seattle as a bike launching point for adventures. And then we are going to be talking about the update to my Brompton. And my Brompton is physically here in this great city of Seattle. And it is at, I think I found the shop. I think I found the right shop for me in one shot, which made me very happy. So we'll talk a little bit about where the Brompton's at and what's going on with that. And then we're going to be talking very briefly about the ACA Building Sale and where it's at right now and just a brief thought in all of this before we turn to the Ask Me Anything section of this here program. And of course, as you all know, folks who are in the chat room get first dibs, emailers get second dibs. And then we go to the random number question. So be ready, chat room. I'm going to be needing to lean on you possibly for random numbers down the line. In the interim, we've got, let's see, G4 is already chiming in on Seattle. Seattle, of course, has many draws, so that was the pull factor. The most major question, hold on, we'll do questions later. Ray is chiming in from the Costco in Hayward, California, waiting for a tire repair. Hey, man, there are worse reasons to be at a Costco in Hayward, California. Let me tell you. And what else have we got? Terry's filing a question now. Terry, we will get those in order. And please, both of you, G4 and Terry, remind me if I forget that you are first in line here. I'm very happy about this whole first in line thing. Let me just give a little bit of an insight before we get all Seattle-y. I actually applied for a new apartment today, like 5 hours ago, quite literally. And Seattle has special rules, like many cities do, but it's a first-in-time rule. And I went and I toured the place, and I won't go into details on the neighborhood or the nature of the place, but it's pretty cool. And as a result, I was like, okay, I would really like to apply for this place. And as I walked out, the second group of folks who were touring were walking in, and I was just sitting there going, if I apply right now, I am ensuring that I am ahead of them in line. And so I was literally out on the sidewalk, as I understand many Seattleites do, hitting send and hitting submit on my application. So it's good to be first in line, I'm telling you guys here on the show. So we'll see what ends up happening. Updates on that to come. It is really well located. And if it works out, it checks box after box. I'm pretty stoked about it. And I'm also, as somebody who likes to get things settled a little bit on the early side, this would be for a place that I won't be moving into until March. That feels really way in advance, but I got this place, I think, 2 or 3 months beforehand as well. So I'm just doing all of that and checking my Seattle boxes. So I think it's probably worth turning to thoughts on Seattle as a bike launching point. And I think that I did talk about this in a prior episode, but I think my attitude is a little more crystallized, especially since I've been here. And I'm going to start off by saying that the local trails are absolutely fantastic, and the bike lanes and the bike infrastructure here are quite good. I have not ridden an awful lot within the city of Seattle, with the exception of going from my cousin's place in the Mount Baker neighborhood to essentially right around here, because I often will come here when I've done it to grab a ferry. And I'm literally very close to the ferries right here. I certainly know there are good bike lanes connecting those two parts of town. And talk about a good shrink the world by bike kind of moment with that kind of stuff. When I get on transit, it feels like it's further away. But when you bike it, and you know you can bike it in well under an hour, it seems like it really shrinks things down. That also gets a lot into what I was talking about for the pod that dropped yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, it was me drawing parallels to seeing the world by bike at bike pace, but also seeing a city at the pace of walking, and how that's really shrunk this city down in a major way. Whereas before, I think I would have always been looking to drive when I was here before, when I had a vehicle. And I will have a vehicle later in my run here, but not currently. And doing these walks and then connecting pieces by transit really is helpful. I don't know if you all have this kind of a thing with any given city that you're in, but it is like a giant puzzle. And you will teleport yourself to places using transit or a vehicle or something like that, and view a neighborhood as its distinct little island. But then when you connect it through walking or bicycling, man, it really does make a big difference in terms of connecting all these things. And I think that the local bicycle infrastructure is certainly a part of it. Interesting point right here that Raymond brings up, because I was literally about to talk about this. He's asking about height above sea level, a consideration of where one wants to live from a tsunami perspective. So maybe I'll answer that first and get to what I was thinking of. I think that Seattle is in a reasonably protected spot, except for a few very close into the water areas. Possibly where I'm at right now may be considered one of them. You can take a look. I believe it's at the USGS, or someone else has essentially a tsunami map, and it shows the areas where there is a little bit more of a threat when you're in Seattle. And of course, if you're here, there's been talk of the big one, the Cascadia earthquake, that will come someday. Will it come in my lifetime? Who knows? But yeah, there are places, particularly in West Seattle, but only on Alki Beach. And if I'm saying neighborhoods and stuff that you're unaware of, go to the Google Maps. That's what I would say to you. But if you are familiar, basically you have to be right on Elliott Bay or right on Puget Sound, because what happens with Seattle is it goes up real quick. This is a hilly area. And that's what I was going to be pivoting to when I was talking about the local trails and the local infrastructure. They do take advantage of sort of the seams where things are flat, but you do have to go uphill if you're going to go to certain parts of town. It just is how it is. Now, if you're lucky, you're coming from the other direction, you're going downhill. But that is possibly it. I'm noticing that I'm having some internet difficulties, and Terry is letting me know that I am dropping out for a few seconds here and there. This is the frustration of a new building, and I have great connectivity, but we have, and here's the internet parlance, we have jitter here. And jitter is probably because my neighbors here in this building probably are also doing live shows or something of the effect. Hopefully it will not interfere too much with the live show, and hopefully not too much with everybody's understanding of things. But if it does, don't worry, because I'm recording this separately and you can listen to it and you will get those extra 2 seconds here and there. But in any event, yeah, I think that where I am physically relative to the water, I think it does matter a little bit. I do me a view of water. I don't have it out of this window in my apartment, but I think have I shared pictures? I don't believe I've shared pictures, but there is roof lounge in this building, and I have an expansive view of Elliott Bay, and it's just absolutely stunning. Yeah, you get a lot of that in Seattle. Do I worry about that in terms of where I'm going to be keeping my stuff? I didn't think a ton about it when I just put an application down. We'll just put it that way. I probably am not going to be sharing the neighborhood that I am living in, whether it ends up being this place or not. Just it's good to keep that a little bit on the down low. It was very easy for me to say I live in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, or even what town I lived in, because there was no way anybody was going to stumble upon me that way. But here, if I say a neighborhood, it's a little close. I hope you all forgive me for that. In any event, yeah, the local infrastructure is really good. I'm super stoked about that. It's a real gateway city, though, in terms of the bicycle adventures that are ahead of me. And I think that the other element to all of that is, whereas before I used to have to travel here to the West Coast for my summer adventures, because frankly, I got to the point where it was just too hot for me on the East Coast. I really struggled to enjoy rides on the C&O in the summer and things along those lines. So I'm glad I'm out here because I think that'll mean there'll be more adventures. There probably will be multiple ones through the summer because it's just spectacular here. Just a few of them, and I think I've named a few of these before, but the one that Mysterious James brought up, and there, I think I just dropped again. I just noticed. The one that Mysterious James mentioned, and I think he and I are circling as a possible him and me ride, is the Vancouver Crossing Loop from the ACA. Boy, that looks pretty good. You get Vancouver, you get Victoria, so you've got your kind of urban stuff, but you really get a little bit of Vancouver Island as well, which looks really fantastic. And although I've biked a little bit of that, it's been 11 years, 12 years pretty soon. So I'm excited for adding that to the list. Mark that as a real likely one for this year, but we'll see. That looks like it's a 4 or 5 day adventure, which I think is perfect. The Pacific Coast route, while it doesn't go through Seattle, it's super accessible from Seattle. Many people fly here and start their Pacific Coast adventures here. I've gone there by transit, and yeah, so it's happening. Some section of it is happening, even if I'm going down to Oregon for the nearly annual Oregon Coast Ride. There's a loop ride, I think it's a loop ride called the Washington Parks route that ACA has, which looks intriguing that I'm keeping open as a possibility. And then there's the Seattle to Portland ride, or as it's referred to around here as STP. Now, it's one of those big group rides. And so we want to put a possible maybe on that because I'm not real big on group rides. It's just such a classic that I do think that it's something that's going to be happening. Sadly, the dropouts are getting worse, so hopefully everybody can keep up with me. There is one other thing that I could do and unplug another computer that I got going on here, but I have a funny feeling that's not impacting things. It's, again, probably my neighbors who are downloading things. I'll let your imagination run wild on that. All right, so that's where I'm at on the concept of the routes that are available. I think that the other thing that has become very clear on a day like today, which in the middle of January, Seattle's reputation is it's going to rain all day and it's going to be awful and terrible. And today was sunny and beautiful. And I unfortunately did not get a chance to try to get a glimpse of one of the mountains, of the mountain. That's the fake Mount Rainier right behind me. And of course, also the Olympic Mountains, which are absolutely stunning. They've been making appearances for the better part of the last couple of weeks, off and on, but on a day like this, I'm sure that they were out. So hopefully I'll get a chance to see. We'll get a good stretch of weather again. This is an unusual stretch of good weather, but I say it for this. I think that there is year-round cycling here. I don't have to worry about traveling necessarily someplace, although certainly that will get me better weather. There's a possible California adventure that I'm looking at that would be happening in the next, say month or so, that if I can cobble together a weekend or something like that, I would certainly do that. Not because it's not good cycling up here or isn't possibly good cycling up here. It's just that I'm guaranteed it if I go to Southern California. Absolutely, possibly a thing going on. We got a lot of stuff going on in the chat box here. We got G4 talking about roof lounges being the best. I tell you, I have made a lot of people jealous in my life by showing pictures of that thing, and working up there is just absolutely fantastic. And another comment from G4 about the rain being a myth. We Seattleites all agreed to spread in order to keep the Pacific Northwest to ourselves. Hey, look, when I lived in Portland, there was a very big thing about everybody going, shh, don't tell anybody how awesome this place is. And I think the same is true here as well. Ray asks a really good question. Is the ferry to the San Juans close? Yeah, like literally stumble out the door close to where I'm at right now. But yeah, it's very easy to get to the San Juan Islands from here. Also, there's a fast ferry to Victoria from here. There's also Bainbridge Island. If you go down to West Seattle, you can get to Vashon Island. Can you get to Vashon from here? I think you have to go to West Seattle and then you have to go to, is it Fauntleroy? I can't even remember. I'm learning as I go along here. One thing I will say, as part of my kind of, hey, I'm moving to Seattle thing over the holidays, I watched the classic 89-ish, 90-ish, 91-ish, 92-ish. Sleepless in Seattle. Great movie. Is it a great movie? It's a great rom-com. We'll put it that way. But there is a scene where, you may remember this, Meg Ryan's actually standing, nearly getting run over by vehicles on a what seems to be a major thoroughfare, looking over at Tom Hanks and his son, just staring and ogling. And I'm like, oh, wait, I know where that is. That's Westlake right there. I have a good sense of that. That's where some houseboats are. That must be where they are. And then things went to hell as she follows them because they get in a boat. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay, so they're on Lake Union. So they would presumably end up going to somewhere else on Lake Union. No, they end up in West Seattle on Alki Beach, which, if you know the geography of the area, would require them to go out through the shipping locks on the canal and then take a hazardous ride through Puget Sound and Elliott Bay to get to Alki Beach. But I immediately stopped the movie and went to AI. I went to ChatGPT to prove my Seattle-ness. I said, did I just identify this correctly? And it gave me 5 stars, 5 Seattle stars, which was actually nice. That was really fun. Let's see. Ray mentions about ferries. We use the Bay Area ferries to do fun day rides. Hey, look, the ferries are great in the Bay Area. They can take you to some really fantastic things. I particularly liked using it as an alternate way to get from the city to fast forward yourself a little bit on the West Coast route. I think it gets you, not to Santa Rosa. It gets you up that direction, not nearly as far as Santa Rosa, or maybe it is. I can't remember, but it gets you up that direction, and that's pretty great. Anyways, yes. So Seattle, Sleepless in Seattle, do not follow for geographic advice. It is not good for that. So that's basically where I'm at, and I think that there's some really exciting things to come on the podcast, and this is just me underscoring that the move here is certainly going to change the emphasis of where the adventures happen, but I think that it's going to enhance it, and that really seems to be. Good question that's coming here from Ocean Drifters 183. Will I be able to live car-free there? Yes, I'm currently doing it. I do have a vehicle on the East Coast. I will be bringing it out here sometime down the line. And when I say down the line, we're talking order of months, not weeks. And it is, you said carefree and thinking. Yes, I knew what you meant. I knew you meant car-free. And it definitely will be coming. I will probably live a pretty car-light existence just because if I end up at the place that I just applied to today, I have walk scores, bike scores, and transit scores in the 80s. So that is pretty good. So I think that it will exist for how it existed before for me, before I ended up in West Virginia a little more permanently this year. It will serve as the gateway to going to, say, Portland to visit family, or for other places within the city where utilizing a car is a little bit better. My dog is not super mobile, and he comes with me everywhere because he has to. And so the car can be handy for those types of things if I have to go run to a grocery errand or something along those lines. So car light for sure. I already own it, and I don't plan on getting rid of it. And it will be very handy to get out certain things, including Mr. Mookie, because that's just how it is. So that's it. That's Seattle. I want to pivot briefly, speaking of bikes, to my Brompton. And the Brompton made the trip out here. And I believe I talked a little bit about this on last episode. And if I didn't, forgive me, I'm going to repeat it here. I was able to get the bike out here as a checked bag, which I had never done before and never really trusted before. I have quite literally a vintage suitcase that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in fact, actually, I found the receipt in it from a Portland area department store. I don't think it exists anymore, where I bought it for the trip back east to DC when I moved in, 2001? Because I drove back, but I did a couple of back and forths prior to that, I believe for an interview for a job that I had. Anyways, that was a way to get a bunch of stuff back with me as a check bag on that particular flight. And that was, I'm going to have to take a pause here because look who's in the room, folks. It is Brock Dittis, friend of the show. Hello, sir. I will stop a show to say hello to you. He says, yo. I say yo back, Brock. In any event, the whole notion of having this gigantic suitcase was really awesome. And I thought to myself, wait a second, can my Brompton fit in that? And the answer is Ish, yes. And it did. I was able to wrap it in a comforter and a whole bunch of other things. Did the smart things that one does when one checks a Brompton. There's tons of YouTube videos on it. I thought about videoing it and putting it up on this YouTube station. God, am I 7,000 years old? On the YouTube channel, but I did not. And as a result, I was very pleased. That is an option. Ordinarily for a tour, it's a terrible idea for me to throw a Brompton in a suitcase. And that's the whole idea about that dog's body bag and the other things. So when you can roll your conveyance that carries your bike into something you can carry yourself, you are much more free to move. For this particular situation, I didn't have that. I was coming to an apartment. There was some utility in bringing that large bag, and it worked. I got the bike here. It did just fine. It was in a bit of a sad state of affairs. The saddle post wasn't really working very well. I really had to cinch it down. I knew it needed some help. So I found there are two decent looking Brompton shops here in the greater Seattle area. And I went to one of them and I was super pleased so far with how it's been. Able to drop it off. Their hours, 7 days a week, good hours, which is not always the case for bike shops. And the dude who I talked to, whether he was the owner or just wrenching on the bikes, really awesome. Had a great conversation on the phone afterwards when he identified, yeah, there's stuff that needs to be replaced with the saddle post. And so I'm doing that. And also he identified something that I thought was true, but it's good to have that confirmation that my tires need to be replaced yet again. And part of it is, and for you Brompton folks, especially if you do real miles on them like I do, you got to watch the inflation on your tires. And over the length of a longer ride, a multi-day ride like I do, I need to be better about getting those tires inflated up into at least the 80, 85, 90 PSI range. Because what ends up happening is that those tires, when they're underinflated and you ride on them with a load, not just me, but the gear, over great distance, you're going to put some real wear on them that will cause them to fail. And so as a result, I'm going to have to replace them. It's fine. It just says that I rode them good and hard. That's how I feel. And I didn't get a call today, which means that I'll get it when I come back in a week. So that's pretty exciting. So yeah, Brompton is here. When I come back, assuming that does every city have this person? There is a person, it feels like, in every city that is the weather nerd. They're the ones that look at the super long range forecasts and they have a YouTube channel or something like that. There's a guy here in Seattle that was being a little coy and was suggesting that I'm back on the East Coast for a week, then back here. The week I'm back here, this weather nerd guy was like, showing a model that suggested that there's going to be major snow here in Seattle because that's when I would have my bike available. So in any event, yeah, that's we'll see. You thought I moved out here and would not get snow anymore, but no. Brompton makes a rolling bike suitcase that is supposed to meet the airline size limits. That is correct. Brompton does do that. What else happens on Alaska Airlines and Southwest? We don't know about Southwest these days. They're doing weird stuff. But in any event, on Alaska Airlines, I can just have my cover on my Brompton and throw in the overhead. That ends up working just fine. I will say that there's certainly the possibility of finding a rollerboard, not a rollerboard, but a rolling suitcase like mine that's a little more modern. I believe there's one particular brand that Brompton people say works. I cannot remember. I think it's a Samsonite. It's enormous because you get to the point where it can be too big for even checking the bag, or you start to get into oversized territory. This is a within parameters piece of luggage. It's just really nice that's the case that I've got that. I don't know if I'll need to do it again, but I know it's nice that if I do, it's an opportunity and I could do that. I can't think of any reason off the top of my head, but it was just nice to be able to transport it that way. I was able to get on the light rail here in Seattle and take the light rail and then drag that bag. It had wheels on it to my apartment, and it was a quarter mile. So it was nice to be able to do that rather than luggage, computer bag, and then the Brompton. That would have just been really tough, and it's cobblestoney around here. So yeah, it would have been just a little bit too tricky. Yeah, Brock's telling me that I'm smart. Thank you, sir. You said that is smart. Maybe, I don't know if you meant I am smart. That's entirely possible. But Todd asks, do I use an IKEA bag or an actual Brompton bag cover? I use both. When I am when I'm getting on a flight, what I will do is I have a stretchy cover that's not neoprene, but it's stretchy. It's got some stretch to it. And it fits like a sock over it. And that works really well. I also bring one of those IKEA, I believe it's the Dimpa bag, and they may have changed those names recently. I bring that also just in case, because there's all the horror stories that are out there of folks that are trying to come on board. They board early. I always make sure that I'm able to board early. I have status on Alaska, so usually I can. But in any event, I bring a Dimpa bag with me just in case they force me to gate check. And if that's the case, then I can throw it in there and we pray to the bicycle and baggage handling gods that it makes it all okay. Interesting. Yes, no problem finding Brompton snow tires in Seattle. I'm sure of that. I just don't care for cycling in the ice conditions. I think that it's a little too tricky. It's not that I don't think I could ride, especially with some snow tires. I don't think that folks around here drive very well in the snow. I've experienced that both on the Portland side of things. Northwest people back me up. Everybody who has chains on their tires thinks that they can just drive any place. And the reality is, especially with these hills, it is a disaster. And I am not going to be on a bike when somebody is skidding with their multi-ton vehicle into me. Yeah. Oh, Scott asks, does Brompton make tire chains? I would be stunned if they do, but I do believe there are studded tires that are available. For Bromptons, though, I'm not sure if I've ever seen them, but I would think that maybe they'd have them. Yeah, and G4, yep. Seattle lights suck in the snow. It is not just Seattle lights. I think it's lots of people suck at driving in the snow. But I also think that people like me who grew up driving in the snow, your Western New Yorkers, your Midwesterners, we get out to a place like this and we're like, oh yeah, man, this is just 4 inches of snow. This is nothing. This is a Tuesday where I grew up. Except the thing is that on Tuesdays where we grew up, there were plows and they salted the roads, and here they do not. And also the hills around here are no joke, and just don't overestimate things. This is a city where I will gleefully become a local when and if it snows and stay inside and just wait for 2 days for it to melt. So that's it for Bromptons. That's it for all that. One other thing before we turn to the Ask Me Anything section of our fine program here. And where are we at on the time here? Holy smokes, I've been talking a while. Boy, I thought this was going to be a short show. I guess not. I want to briefly turn to the ACA Building Sale. If you were not with the show that dropped yesterday, it basically flamed out. I said, look, I'm out. I watched this nearly 2-hour meeting. It was on YouTube. I was able to watch it at 1.5 speed. And even then, it was still a little too long for me. There are some really grounded people. There are some really thoughtful people that fit on both sides. And then there's just some assholes. Just wow. I just was like, yeah, I got enough of this in my day job. I just decided to tap out. But in any event, I will say this. I think that the sale of all of this, and before I go into this again, I am not a member of the ACA, and therefore I do not feel like I am going to insert my opinions outside of calling people assholes, apparently. That I just don't think it's my place. But I think it's newsy. It's part of bicycle adventuring, so I do think it's worth chatting about here. I think that the sale of the building is confused at this point because I think it's become a proxy for, do you, the members, like the direction for Adventure Cycling Association? And when I first started talking about this subject, I got a bunch of emails from people who are very much not into what's been going on with ACA and their direction for all sorts of different reasons. And some I think are super reasonable and some I think are unhinged, but hey, you do you. I think that what we end up with is that all of this rhetoric conflates a lot of things into one big ball. And that makes sorting through a lot of these arguments to be pretty tricky. And so if you are a member and you are voting, I do not envy you, because I think that you have to spend a lot of time to cut through some of the issues that are involved here. But at the end of the day, the vote is just on this one simple issue, is whether or not you think that it's a good idea or not to sell this building, and from any of the various points of view. I don't want to go into all of it. There's tons of good information on the websites. You've doubtlessly gotten a bunch of emails from folks on every single side of this issue. So my big thing is I work for an organization that's big on nonpartisan get out the vote efforts. So I'm going to do it right here. Get out to vote. Make sure you vote. I think that no matter what, we're all hoping that the ACA comes out of this stronger, that the ACA comes out of whatever reorg is probably overstating it, but whatever new things it decides to do, whatever changes it determines to make with I believe it's a reasonably new executive director, whatever the board ends up doing, whatever membership ends up doing. This is an important organization that has a big impact on bicycle travel adventures here in the United States and, dare I say, abroad too. So I'm really hoping that this all ends up working out. I was going to do a whole episode on it that would have dropped yesterday, and I'm really glad I didn't. Just between you and me. I just think that there's just so much stuff going on, and I get opinion-y about stuff, and I just don't think it's my place. So that's it. That's the ACA stuff. There was a lot of movement here from, let's see, G4, Seattle sucking in the snow. We covered that. Yeah. There we go. We got questions being filed. That's what we got. Because why? It's AMA time. It's Ask Me Anything time. We have got, I would say roughly another, we'll do this for about 20-ish minutes or so. We'll make this a solid hour-long episode of the program here. And so the way we end up working this out, folks who are in the space, you get to go. And so folks have already started asking questions. I need to scroll back because I believe that we had some G4 questions early on. We had some other folks early on. Oh, what do we got here? Sorry, this is fascinating radio here. Terry got in first. If I can file this question now, in case I get called away, please tell us about your plans to explore some of the reportedly great trails to the east of you, like the Coeur d'Alenes and the ones near it. Thankfully, I did not actually answer this question quite yet, Terry. I'm super excited for the possibility of Eastern Washington and Eastern Oregon. It's been something I've wanted to do. Timing is tricky. Those two, once you get east of the Cascades here in the Northwest, you've got the narrow season from my perspective as somebody who does not like lots of sun and lots of heat. The summer is out. So it's shoulder season that I think really makes a big difference. In Oregon, you get the high desert, emphasis on high, which means that we could be getting into freezing temperatures pretty quickly in those shoulder seasons. So again, narrow times to be able to do that. You had mentioned some of the trails that go even further east into Idaho, I believe. All on the table. There certainly is the idea of connecting the multi-year cross-country trip that I've been doing for multi-years, but by doing it going west-east from this side. I basically have ridden I have ridden a bicycle on multiple trips, starting in DC, going all the way to, I believe I could say Kansas City, or in the Kansas City area because of a variety of different things that I've ridden. Am I missing? Because no, actually that's not true. I have to connect somewhere in Ohio to St. Louis. That's a piece. And then I've got that all the way through. On the west side, I've never really moved east too much. And a lot of that has to do with temperature and all sorts of different reasons. And so, yeah, I think that me going eastbound from Seattle or from someplace on the West Coast that I can easily get to from Seattle to start things off, that's 100% in the cards. And I'm really very excited about all of that. Ray Jackson asks, am I thinking about any Canada tours? The answer to that is heck yeah. I think I've mentioned this on many a show. I love me some Canada. I love my Canadian people. I have friends up north. In fact, when I announced the move on LinkedIn, the kind of professional social media thing, old friend from the past who does a lot of work on clean water issues, Lake Ontario clean water issues, said, hey, now you can go to Vancouver. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So Vancouver is definitely and just the other day, and in fact, if you listen to the show, I was sitting there right outside the fast ferry to Victoria going, I could just hop on that tomorrow or the next day or something like that. So yeah, Canadian adventures are super on the table. And now that I have replaced my lost passport because I'm an idiot, and now I also have very exciting for me. The first time I've ever had this, I have an enhanced ID. Now that I'm a resident of Washington State, I can use that to cross into Canada. I do not have to bring my passport. That is super exciting. And so, I can literally go to Canada on a whim with that particular license. And I'm very excited about all of that. Ray, I already answered your question about C-level considerations. I'm going in order here as we go along. Let's see. Ferries. I answered the car-free life or the carefree life, which could be one and the same. Here we go, Scott. Thoughts about doing the Great Divide Trail or something similar out there? I have had Great Divide FOMO from my buddy Mysterious James, who I believe has talked about his adventures on the Great Divide on this show. And I need to get the right bike, I think, for it first. And that is very much on my task list, on my things to do, because I think that the kind of bike that will be really successful for a lot of the adventures around here is the kind of bike that would do the Great Divide, or would do, again, I've already forgotten this, and then I think I did this on the last live show. There is a trail, I think it's the John Wayne Trail it's called, that goes clear across Washington State as well. That's another one and it gets very gravelly and very rugged. It's an off-road adventure for sure. That's the kind of bike you would need for that. So I think that there's an order of operations here that requires me to get a proper bike. I cannot overestimate how excited I am that Brock Dittus is here, and I'm just going to highlight his yo again. Hello, Brock. Let's see. What else do we got? We got the bike. We talked Bike Fridays. We got through the Brompton questions. And let's see. G4's got one here. I feel like you had an earlier one. And there we go. Seattle, of course, has many draws, so that was the pull factor. My most major question was why the push factor to leave DC, and why now? Why not last year or next year? That gets into some topics that I'm not going to talk about, but I will say this. I couldn't do another summer in DC. I just couldn't do it. Climate change is real. It is causing the temperatures to consistently get shittier in DC. And last summer, I just couldn't do it. I was supposed to actually come out here for a month. And then, of course, everybody knows my mom fell very ill and later passed away, and I had to cancel that trip. But I was supposed to be out here for I'm sure there would have been a couple of days in the 80s and 90s even. It happens here in Seattle, again, because climate change is real, and it happens even here in Seattle. But summers here are a lot better. And so the timing on it was, I'm not going to do another summer in the DC area. And the other factor that was really helpful was my day job. We are fully remote. We do have the office in DC, but being fully remote gave the opportunity to be able to move. And when I said Seattle, they actually were not unhappy about that. We've never had a presence for my office in the Pacific Northwest, tons in California, but never in the Pacific Northwest. And I've always thought that was a missing piece. And so here we are. And I'm very excited about all of that. And that kind of really gets into most of the timing issues around all of that. Let's see. I'm going to skip your next question, G4. We will get you back there and again. And let's see. Here we go. Where is the future of bike travel going? Touring, bike packing, etc. I feel like that this has been a topic that I covered a little bit at the end of last year, but I will say this. I don't know. And I think part of it is there's been a lot of thoughtfulness that came out of listeners, some of you who are actually in the room right now, about what's really happening. And is this the kind of thing that maybe appealed more to folks who are my age and older? So you're Gen X and older, you're Gen X, you're boomers and whatnot. And it's trailing off for millennials and for Gen Zers. And I just use the generational tags. I think sometimes generational stuff is not super illuminating, but I will say this, that it's pretty clear, just based on anecdotal evidence that I collect over time, there's fewer folks on bicycles out there on the routes that I've ridden for years. And something is changing in all of that. And I think one of the very big things is that people are leaving bicycling around other motor vehicles. Yes, when you're in a city from a commuting perspective, yes. But from an adventure perspective, because bike packing gear has gotten so much lighter and better, and the bikes are better, I think that a lot of the folks that might have come this direction for the traditional pannier pavement stuff, they're going that direction. I don't know for sure, but I think that's a big direction. And we're seeing the groups like ACA, and we're seeing the Rails to Trails folks. They're really succeeding. I think getting folks off of roads seems to be where the energy is these days. And so that might be part of it as well. I do think that the combination of, at least in this country, and I've been very US-centric about that because it's where I live, but like, I don't have a sense that it's decreasing in the same numbers necessarily elsewhere, especially in Europe. I think the Eurovelos are still pretty popular. So in any event, that's where I think it's going. I think that it's a complex question, and I think it's still going to be out there. I just don't know if there was an expectation, I think, not too far off from when I first started this podcast. And it wasn't a driving reason why I did the podcast. I did it because I just enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed podcasting. I enjoyed riding my bike on these crazy adventures. And so that's where Pedal Shift came from. But there was a sense that this thing was going to continue to grow. There was a sense after COVID and the spike after COVID that maybe it would grow. And I don't think that's happened. And I'm not sure if it's going to happen. So I think bike travel, bike packing, yes. Bike touring as we know it, maybe on a bit of a decline. That's semantics, and that's just choosing where you're going. I'm excited for the future for me personally. I've got a bunch of years ahead of me, and I intend to do it. And there's only a few of us left doing it. Hey, so be it. If there's more, hey, all the better. Love hanging out with people in camp. Mr. Brock Dittis asks a question. How are the bikes in transit situation in Seattle nowadays? I will say this. We're in the down season. I don't see a lot of folks on bikes. When I have been on the buses, it's been a really minimal amount of people who've been throwing bikes on to the front of on the bike racks. When I've been on light rail, it's been largely going from between here and the airport. I haven't seen a single bike once on light rail. So we're in the off season. So I don't think that I would say that there's anything that I can say definitive about it. But so ask me again in the spring. But I suspect that the infrastructure is there. I'm looking forward to plugging into some of the local Seattle bike groups and coalitions to learn a little bit more about their advocacy, because if there's one thing I know about folks on bikes in a city is we are never satisfied. And so I am looking forward to hearing what the dissatisfaction is along with the satisfaction. I think what I see is great, and I'm excited to plug in a little bit more on that. Terry, yes, I did answer your question on the Coeur d'Alene, so you'll have to go back and either when this show is done, it takes about a half hour to gurgle back up to YouTube. You can watch it tonight, or you can listen next Thursday on the pod. Todd chimed in on Brock's question. I use my bike on the front of the buses frequently, and it's great. The new Rapid Ride G is great. Bikes ride inside and doors on both sides of the buses. I did not know that about the Rapid Ride G. I have not had to ride that one yet. I love the Rapid Rides. Those have been very handy for me to get. Let's say I got to Ballard pretty quickly that way, and I got to Seattle Center area really quickly that way. And I really like that as having an express line, and they run frequently. I think that's good. Seattle Transit got low marks from a couple of people in my life that have Seattle ties. So far, I would say I'm not sure where they're getting that from. It might be service levels. It might have been where they were. I had a ghost bus here and there, but I expect that everywhere. So my Seattle Transit story so far has been quite good, and I've been really happy about all of that. This is a good question, and I got to pull out my glasses because the font is too small because I want to read your name. It's Alcoside or Alec Oside or some variation of that, and forgive me if I'm reading that like a maniac. Best and worst moments from podcasting about bike touring for 10 years. I'm not sure anybody's ever asked me that. What's my best? I think that my favorite stuff has been connecting with people that have become regulars here in the live show. I feel privileged to call Brock Dittus a friend. We met through podcasting. I think that's the best part. And it's not even particularly close. I also like that it proves that I can do something regularly and consistently more than just breathing in and out. Because I do this pretty much on a weekly basis. The fact that I was able to do it through all the family shit that I had last year and in the middle of this move, although wait for the end of the show because I got an announcement on that. I think that's been really nice to have all of that. And worst, boy, I'm not sure if I have a worst. I think that the only thing that I would say is a drag is when I am wanting to do something with the intention for it to be on the show and it just sucks and it's just not good enough. And the most recent example was I recorded some stuff in Honolulu. I was really excited to bring a little flavor of that trip. I was excited to get on a bike and it just rained off and on all day. And what I recorded wasn't particularly interesting. And I just was like, yeah, this sucks. And so as a result, there are times when I will put effort into something and just say, this isn't good enough. And then I wasted a fair amount of time. And worse, when I pre-announce it like I had for that particular one. That's like my least favorite part. I'm not sure if that's a worst moment. I've had some gnarly moments on the bike, certainly, and actually not very far from here. I think the closest I ever came to just flat out dying was years ago. And I think that we may be revisiting it soon when I did a Brompton ride on the Olympic Peninsula over here. And I was foolish enough to do it in April and it was like 40 degrees and raining. And that was just a terrible idea. I had to keep going. I think I've said this before. I had to keep riding regardless of whether I needed a break or not, because when I stopped producing heat and oh my God, yeah. You will not catch me doing anything like that. I have plenty of adventures that I can do where I'm not going to repeat that specific ride in that way at that time. Absolutely not. Let's see here. Oh, we got a friend of the show, Miraculous Silver Slipper. You know who you are. Hello, hello. Let's see. We've got, have you followed any other Seattle area bike YouTubers? Best Side Cycling is my favorite. None of them, Scott. And I need to. One of my jobs, frankly, right now is to try to just integrate myself into the community as best as I can. And one of the big things that I've been doing this week is I've just been hanging out at KAXP. If you don't know KAXP, it's a community radio station. They are great. They play awesome music and they have this great community space right in Seattle Center. And there's a coffee shop there. There's a Sub Pop Records little pop-up that I was told is actually going to become permanent. That's a pretty awesome way to get the music side of me integrated into the community. And I'm super stoked about all of that. I got to do the exact same thing on the bike side of things. One thing I'll say is I didn't really do that in DC because what I do in DC, it's mostly commuter stuff. And don't get me wrong, that's all super important. But I have a funny feeling there's probably some more aligned people here in Seattle with the kind of riding that I do. So I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And maybe doing some kind of meetup or something like that, even if it's casual, I would love to do stuff like that. Yeah. Todd, climate change. Seattle is the new San Diego. Yeah, that sounds less awesome than I think a lot of people would want. Terry asks, what other podcasts do I listen to and what YouTubers do I follow? This is a great question. So this ebbs and flows depending on where my brain is and what's going on. I will say my very favorite podcast, and it has been for years, is done out of Slate. It's called Hit Parade. It is a song about the charts. And the dude who is the host, Scott Malanphy, is, I think, was born within he was born the same week as me. Why do I know that? Because there's this thing that chart nerds do when we know what the number one song of the week that we were born was. And the one that was for me is a horrific song. I was born in 1971, one of the greatest years in music history. 71, 84, 99. You got a lot of, is it 99? No, it's 91. 71, 84, 91. Those are just epic. Except some horrific Donny Osmond single was the week that I was born. And then when he turned a round number, birthday, it turned out the same round number birthday, he talked about that song being his birthday week number one. And I was like, oh, okay, now I know why this resonates, because we're cut from the same cloth of birthday weeks. In any event, Hit Parade, highly recommend that. I listen categorically, and it will ebb and flow. I am right now listening to a metric crap ton of Buffalo Bills content, because go Bills. We have a big game tomorrow that unfortunately I'll be flying during some portion of, or driving during some portion of, which is no fun, but go Bills. And go Hawks. I went to 2 Seahawks games here in a row, their final 2 home games here, and they won both of them. So clearly I should be paid to go to Seahawks games. What else do I listen to? I listen to just a lot of like weird finance kind of stuff. I'm the latter-day convert on the FIRE movement, and that's financial independence, retire early. I think that's interesting. There are some clowns in that movement, don't get me wrong, but I think that there's some really interesting stuff that you can pick and choose from all of that. There's a podcast I listen to. It's super, man, I'm not sure I recommend this, because you have to get through things, because he uses a soundboard, which is normally kryptonite to me. But what's it called? Risk Parity Radio. Again, you're either going to get into it, or you're going to absolutely want to murder the dude within 5 minutes of listening to it, because he uses sound clips from like pop culture and movies and stuff like that. You later learn that they all are for a reason based on what he's talking about, but it is constant all the way through it. And I've gotten to the point where it was, okay, I can ignore that, or it's actually amusing to me now. When you're brand new to it, Risk Parity Radio, it's the Drambuie of podcasts. I will just put it that way. Those are a few of the things that I'm sure I listen to other categories. Oh, I'm a Marvel nerd, of course. I'm a Star Wars nerd. I listen to a limited amount of offerings within those genres, but I'll dip in and out. Tech stuff, Accidental Tech Podcast is a big one for me. As far as YouTubers, look, the number one outdoor guy that I watch is Foresty Forest. He is awesome. He is cool. Another Canadian guy, lives in a van. He goes off on these mountaineering adventures. He brings his dog Rocco with him. It's just, I cannot tell you. I like when a Foresty Forest vid pops up in my feed, I'm in instantly. I love it. He's fantastic. 10 out of 10, no notes. So anyways, those are just a few of the things I listen to and watch. I'm trying to think on the YouTube side. I let the algorithm wash over me a lot, and that's probably a terrible idea. G4, another question. You have a surprise long weekend next week. What's your first 3 to 5 day trip? Sadly, I'm going back to West Virginia next week, so I'm not going to be able to do an actual bicycle adventure during this one. Ask me again in February, because that one's looking like a possibility, maybe. I will be here in Seattle. Again, we're just going to have to figure that all out. The first one, I think that if I'd be here in Seattle, it really is going to depend on the weather and what's going on. I may do something kind of last minute is possibly the best thing there. My nephew is saying hi. He's saying hi a lot, so I'm going to say hi back. Hey, buddy. Let's see. Best Side Cycling. I'm glad to be hearing about these recommendations for Best Side Cycling. I will definitely check them out. Super excited for recommendations. All of you folks who have given me Seattle stuff, I'm so grateful for all of that, because it really helps me to curate some stuff, because this is a paradox of choice of place. That is for damn sure. Oh, that's very kind of you. Ocean Drifters 183. Thank you for you being you. God, I can barely read these days. And sharing all of your adventures and stories. We are all better for it. That's awfully nice. And Brock, thank you for agreeing with that. That's absolutely amazing. Great question from Brock. Can I ride my bike to the Seattle Airport, which I assume? The answer is yes, you can. Many people would say, why bother doing that when you can take light rail there? I love the idea of riding to airports. I think I did an entire episode, if memory serves it, I didn't. It certainly was a topic in one about the notion of riding to airports as part of your bike adventures. I love landing in an airport and biking away. And that's really fun. I did that in Florida for years. This will be the first winter I don't do a Florida trip since COVID. And then I did it a few years before that. So it's been a while, but yeah, G4 is going to rant on rapid rides. I'm going to allow that for another podcast, but you can read it in the comments. Let's see. Rapid rides are a mixed bag. Okay. All right. I can buy that. They've been great for me so far. I've had a good sense. Oh, we have competing stuff. This is a problem right here, Scott. Scott says go Niners. Now, the 49ers, San Francisco's, or should I say Santa Clara's team? That's a jab. They are playing the Seahawks this weekend, the local team. And because I live here now, I got to semi-adopt the local team. So I'm sorry to say that I will be rooting for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm happy to say, I should say, but yeah. And G4, who wraps up this section in room of the Drambuie podcast. This is the content we tune in for. Hey, I want to do, we'll do as the last question here, I want to make sure I get Byron. Byron, as I mentioned, is on an adventure, a bicycle adventure with his buddies down in Australia. And he made sure that he wanted to get an email in for a question. And he says this: you mentioned looking for a new bike. Are you going to try and outfit it to carry your gear in a different way? Have you thought about the bikes with front racks mounted directly to the frame rather than to the fork? All of these things are in the wheelhouse. I had the delight of being able to hang out with Mysterious James for more than a few hours over the last few weeks. He was on the East Coast and came over to the cabin, and we just yacked away about the next bike thing. And I think he and I are both looking at relatively similar bikes. I think that everything that you mentioned, Byron, is on the table. I want to carry my gear not only in a different way, but I think that I'm going to really embrace an ultralight mentality for this next bike. And I'm really excited for that because I think that it opens the doors in a lot of ways for not only just a more minimalist perspective, but riding lighter means maybe riding a little faster, riding a little easier. I'm not getting any younger here. I'm hopefully getting in better shape. I feel like I'm in better shape at this point than I was the last few years. So that's really important. But I'm thinking of shaking up the bike that is next and applying those lessons, I think, to a whole bunch of different adventures that are going to be coming up. And yeah, that's definitely happening. So that's it for questions. We did a little supersized show here. I hope everybody had a good time. This was super fun. I'm really excited that we were able to smash in a live show here in Seattle before I have to hop on a plane and go back east. This will, of course, be available on YouTube within, a half hour of this thing wrapping up here. It will also be available next week and the main audio feed. So if you're listening to it now, hello from the future or the past? No, you're in the future. I'm in the past. Timelines. You would think that Marvel movies would have taught me about this, but they've taught me nothing. Absolutely nothing. All right. I think that we did it. We did the deed. We did the thing. Thank you, everybody in the chat room, for coming. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will see you next time, except, you thought I was just going to close the show. I have one other thing. And I talked about it before. I'm going to be taking a winter break. And I need a little space to get things figured out. I've got stuff going on here. I've got stuff going on back east. So just like last year, I did a spring break. I am going to be doing a winter break starting next week. So February's 5th, 12th, 19th, 26th, and then March 5th are all going to be best ofs. But this is a highly curated list of best ofs. Brock Dittis, I'm so excited you are here. Why? Because you, sir, are one of the best ofs, one of the curated best ofs. February 5th, Best of 327, The Evolution of Bike Adventure Gear. February 12th, Olympic Peninsula Part 1 and the 19th Part 2. It's the hypothermia ride. I cannot wait for you to listen to that one. It's a good one. Brompton Stealth overnight on the 26th. I don't remember where that overnight was, presumably on the C&O. And last but not least, Brock, your Jalapeno Popper Tour is going to be on March 5th as an absolute best of. It was a banger, best of 329. We finally got enough episodes in that it's been a couple of years, so we're rebroadcasting that. Winter break, I will see you all again in, I guess that would be closer to mid-March, but a lot of stuff will happen. I'll have a lot of stories. I might even have a tour that has already happened. We shall see, but I will see you in March. Thank you all for joining. Enjoy your winter break. I'm excited to listen to these shows again, too. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album, track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.